Detective James Miller stood in front of the old Victorian mansion, its white paint peeling like dead skin. The house had earned its nickname, the Pale Horse, from its ghostly appearance and the strange events that happened there. Tonight, another mystery awaited inside. "Detective, you need to see this," Officer Sarah Thompson called from the doorway. Her face was pale in the moonlight. Inside, the living room was a frozen scene. An elderly man, Richard Wellington, lay dead in his favorite armchair. On the table beside him sat an empty teacup and a letter. Nothing seemed disturbed, no signs of struggle, no forced entry. "Natural causes?" Miller asked the medical examiner. Dr. Peters shook his head. "Poison." His tea was laced with a rare toxin from a plant called white snake root. Very hard to detect. Miller walked around the room, noting 3 important details: a fresh cushion on an old sofa, a slightly crooked family photo, and a small white flower petal on the carpet. 4 suspects were waiting in different rooms. Martha Wellington, the victim's wife of 40 years. James Wellington, his son who needed money. Emma Carter, the young housekeeper. Dr. Thomas Brown, Richard's doctor and old friend. Miller interviewed each suspect carefully. Martha claimed she was in the garden all evening. James said he arrived just before the police. Emma mentioned making tea for everyone at 7 p.m. Dr. Brown stated he visited briefly to check on Richard's heart condition. Something didn't add up. Miller returned to the living room, studying the scene again. The teacup caught his attention. There was a faint lipstick mark, barely visible on the rim. He checked his notes. Only 2 people wore lipstick that night, Martha and Emma. But Martha said she was in the garden, and her hands were still dirty from working with plants. Miller remembered the white flower petal and the fresh cushion. He walked to the garden and found white snake root growing wild. Next to it were fresh cuts in the stems. "I know who did it," Miller announced to the room of suspects. "Emma Carter, you poisoned Mr. Wellington." Emma's face turned white. How did you know?" "Several clues gave you away. The lipstick on the teacup matches yours. You changed the sofa cushion because you spilled tea while mixing the poison. The crooked photo was bumped when you reached behind it to hide the cut flowers. But most importantly, you were the only one who knew about white snake root. I saw your botany textbooks in your room." Emma broke down crying. "He was going to fire me. I needed this job for my college tuition. When I found out he planned to sell the house and move away, I couldn't let that happen." As the police led Emma away, Miller looked back at the pale house. Another mystery solved, but at what cost? The old Victorian stood silent in the moonlight, its secrets finally revealed. The next morning, Miller wrote in his case file, Case 247, the Pale Horse. Status: closed. Weapon: white snake root poison. Motive: desperation. Note: sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who bring you tea with a smile. Like many old houses, the Pale Horse kept its secret until the very end. A simple white flower, a misplaced cushion, and a trace of lipstick, small details that told a story of desperation and death. Detective Miller knew that in his line of work, it was always the little things that revealed the biggest truths. The house would stand for many more years, its pale walls holding countless other stories. But the tale of Emma Carter and Richard Wellington would always be remembered as the night when tea turned deadly at the Pale Horse.